The choice is an illusion. You already know what you have to do.
The following video is mostly intended for humor. I nitpick, make jokes, and generally just have fun pointing out things that don't quite add up. That said, I may make a few actually valid points along the way. I'll leave it to you to decide which is which. Oh, and spoilers! Welcome to the channel, I'm Hayes, I talk movies all day, so subscribe right now if you want to be entertained. And today, I want to talk about The Matrix Resurrections, the 2021, almost 20 years later sequel made by the Wachowskis, divided by two. So how this works is I'm going to go through the movie and point out all the questionable things that I can find in The Matrix Resurrections. So the movie starts off almost exactly the same way the first movie started, except this time we're watching somebody watch the opening scene, $190 million, and it's basically a reaction video.
Why did you save me?
You first. Who are you? Where did you come from?
So the thing about this bit, it feels too quick. Like literally the last scene before this, he's trying to kill her. Now all of a sudden, he's got questions. And yeah, to be fair, the explanation given does make sense, but even still, it just feels too quick. Was that Jeff Bezos? Anyway, we're eventually introduced to Neo, but now he's back to being called Thomas Anderson, who's a game designer, and it turns out that the first three Matrix movies are video games made by Mr. Anderson in this Matrix world. And I ain't mad at it. It's kind of a cool way to explain how it's all connected. What don't make sense though is, Mr. Anderson and Jude have apparently been going to that cafe to creep watch Tiffany for at least a while, but apparently this is the first time they've seen her husband. So what, every other time Chad was just waiting outside the shop? Or is this the first time Chad went to the coffee shop with Tiffany and decided to not go in? Either way, it's kind of odd behavior. But what I really want to know is, how is Tiffany even here? Because Trinity died, like body got mashed up and died. And yeah, she did have that long ass speech before she finally kicked it, but she was dead, so they better have a real good explanation for this. So far, this movie is very meta. The opening scene was a remake of the opening scene in the first film, the Matrix trilogy of video games. Warner Brothers wants to make a sequel, plus all the flashbacks, and that's cool, but it's been over 20 minutes and we still don't know what is actually going on yet. Also, it's kind of odd that in the White Rabbit montage, Tiffany walks past Mr. Anderson twice in a noodle bar. I mean, this guy's been creeping on her for however long, but now they've been introduced, they both go unnoticed. Those noodles must be real good. Anyway, after Mr. Anderson buys Tiffany a cortado, Tiffany refers to the female character in his games being called Trinity as a coincidence. But it really isn't. There are hundreds, if not thousands of girls' names that begin with a T. But then I thought, maybe there's more to it than that. So I looked it up. Turns out, Tiffany is the anglicized version of a Greek name Theophania, which means manifestation of God. And of course in Christianity you have the Holy Trinity, which honestly kind of a stretch, because I can believe the writers of the film might have looked up the meaning of Tiffany, but I'm not sure I believe Tiffany looked up the meaning of Tiffany. You know what I mean? But what is interesting about this scene is that both Tiffany and Mr. Anderson get a cortado, and a cortado is equal parts espresso and steamed milk, which suggests that Mr. Anderson and Tiffany are equals, and I can get behind that. But which one is supposed to be the espresso and which one is supposed to be the steamed milk? Maybe we'll find out later. Or maybe the equal parts espresso and steamed milk is actually representative of the fact that these two extras both walk past the window twice in the same direction as before. Or maybe that was very deliberate to represent a glitch in the Matrix that's going to play an important part in the movie later on. So Mr. Anderson created the Matrix games, and as we just found out, also created the experimental model that other Morpheus was in. Okay, but why didn't he program other Morpheus to look like Morpheus Prime? All he'd have to do is copy and paste the code from the game to the modal. Also, turns out Mr. Anderson's boss is 4K Agent Smith, which is fine, but firstly, why was he going back to the office after everyone was evacuated? And B, why is it the gun that unlocks Agent Smith mode? Dude's been working in the company that made the Matrix games and none of that did anything? Mr. Anderson's been having mental breakdowns wondering what's real and what isn't, and presumably this guy's been fine the whole time? Furthermore, why would the machines allow Smith to be put into the new Matrix? The first Smith did so much damage they had to enlist the help of their own enemy to get rid of him. Did they really think downloading downloading a new skin from the App Store was going to fix their problem? You know, there's been a lot of references to death, particularly suicide in this movie. I'm just wondering, is this film supposed to be about breaking free from social norms? Or is this film supposed to be about escaping reality?
This is how you look to yourself. This is how everyone else sees you.
Okay, so there's a few things to unpack here. The machines altered Mr. Anderson's DSI so that everyone else sees him looking like Jeff Bezos or homeless guy or however many times they've altered it. Okay, that makes sense. But what don't make sense is why would the machines still allow Mr. Anderson to see himself as himself? Why not make it so he sees himself like everyone else? Also, remember when Tiffany said that her husband Chad laughed when she asked him if he thought Trinity from the games looked like her? I think it's fair to assume the machines altered her DSI as well, but then it's the same thing. Why not make it so she sees herself like everyone else? Matter of fact, it's not even an assumption. We know the machines must have altered Trinity's DSI because of her reflection in the table. Here's the thing though, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I got the impression that Mr. Anderson was surprised or at least taken aback when he saw Tiffany's reflection. And if that's true, then it would mean that Mr. Anderson sees Tiffany as the real Trinity. And if that's true, then why would the machines allow Mr. Anderson to see the real Trinity? Furthermore, Bugs said referring to the Matrix that it's footage from the game. Footage, not gameplay, which, by the way, always a red flag when games don't show actual gameplay. But anyway, I know lots of games use live action footage. In fact, Enter the Matrix did that. But if this is footage, that means inside the current Matrix world, they use actors that looked exactly like Neo and Trinity did 20 years ago. I mean, Mr. Anderson and Tiffany see their real selves, but everyone else sees them as a different person, which means those actors are not younger Mr. Anderson and Tiffany, they're actors that looked exactly like the real younger Neo and Trinity. Why would the machines allow this? But to be fair, it does kind of answer a question from earlier why other Morpheus don't look like Morpheus Prime, because other Morpheus is a coded program, whereas Morpheus Prime is an actor. And I guess Mr. Anderson just isn't a good enough coder to get other Morpheus to look more like Morpheus. Also, just for all of this, maybe those aren't actors. Maybe it is the real Neo and Trinity, which would mean that Mr. Anderson didn't create the Matrix games in this new Matrix world, but that was just a false memory planted inside his head. And the footage from the game we see is actually surveillance video from the previous Matrix. Now, if that's the case, then that would mean that the machines had eyes on them the whole time they were inside the Matrix in that first film. So how were they not caught so much sooner? And why would the machines allow Mr. Anderson to be seeing surveillance videos of his previous life? You're just shooting yourself in the foot here, come on. This movie came out in 2021 and no one had an issue with a black guy killing Japanese people. But when Assassin's Creed does it, all of a sudden it's a big problem. Anyway, we're over an hour into this movie. Mr. Anderson is back to being Neo again, but we still don't know what is the actual point. In the first film, we're told that Neo was the chosen one prophesized to return and end the war between machines and humans. Then Matrix 3 ended with Neo ending the war between machines and humans. Now, over an hour into Matrix 4, and we're being told that Neo ended the war between machines and humans. Yeah, we know this. Why are you freeing Neo again? Is there something else he's supposed to do? Because if you have peace with the machines, especially if it's an uneasy peace, then unplugging Neo potentially breaks that peace. They're running a big risk of starting another war with the machines, and we don't know why.
We're about to crash.
Don't you just hate backseat drivers, always shouting their unwanted opinions? Like, shut your mouth and let the man fly. Also, they ripped off Black Panther. Also, it's kind of funny that the Matrix movies are video games inside this current Matrix, and the real world city is called IO, which is a popular extension for free online games. Alright, so I get that the real world has had 60 years go by, but the Matrix has had only 20, which explains Neo and Tiffany being 20 years older while Niobe is 60 years older. However, is Niobe really the only one from Zion to still be there? Not even Kid? Is it really just Niobe? Also, they're kind of implying that Morpheus was killed in some treacherous machine attack, but they're not actually saying that Morpheus was killed in a treacherous machine attack, because if that's what happened, then just say that. If the machines attacked Zion, killing Morpheus and everyone else, and then Niobe only survived because she was elsewhere caught up in a entanglement, then just say that. That would at least give some reason for unplugging Neo again. There seems to be a social political undertone with at least some parts of this film. The idea that once upon a time people wanted the truth, now most are happy to live in ignorance, or something like that. And I ain't mad at it. I mean, let's keep it real. If you spend more than 5 minutes on Twitter, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Anyway, other Morpheus shows up and says, whoa, they put you in the Rapunzel tower. But how would other Morpheus know about Rapunzel? Did the model that Neo make include classic fairy tales?
You gave us space to suck and couch flicks, criminy wiki business.
Am I understanding this right? Facebook and Wikipedia were both products of the new Matrix? So on one hand, we should be grateful for the huge source of free information that Wikipedia is. But then also, this same Matrix is the reason why your auntie sends you videos about how sleeping on your back can cure AIDS. Also, why is Neo saying, I still know Kung Fu? Now, he was Kung Fu fighting in a training construct with other Morpheus. How are you just figuring this out now? I actually like this whole speech from the analyst, along with what Smith said before about needing Neo dead so he and the exiles can have their lives back. It finally gives this movie some semblance of a point. But he also said that the key to the Matrix was Neo and Tiffany keeping them close, but not too close, which really makes the fact that the machines let Neo create a game that either has actors that look exactly like younger versions of his real self or surveillance footage from his previous life even more stupid. Also, didn't Bugs say Jude was a handler? So why would Jude create an opportunity for Neo and Tiffany to meet? That just flies in the face of what they're trying to do. But it does possibly explain why Jude didn't know Tiffany was married. I guess Chad is also a handler that waits outside the coffee shop and only comes in when the other handlers aren't doing their job properly. Also, the analyst said that he was there when Neo died and saw the opportunity right away. Then he said they worked for years before they realized they needed Trinity. However, if that's the case, then wouldn't Trinity's body have long since decomposed? Or were the machines like, yeah, let's just preserve Trinity's body for shits and giggles? They're supposed to be explaining things. I feel like they're just making it seem even more implausible. Actually, to be fair, the analyst did say first he had to convince the suits to let him rebuild both of them. But if he didn't know at that point he was going to need Trinity, why rebuild her? Because it seems to me like this wasn't the plan. You just got lucky. Anyway, when they're back in the real world and Niobe is pissed at them, even though it was her that put Neo in the prison with a balcony, like, of course they were gonna get him out, duh. Bugs snaps at Niobe for caring more about growing fruits than freeing minds. But here's the thing, Niobe is right. Bugs is short-sighted. She's risking causing another war with the machines, and we still don't know for why. Furthermore, why would you focus on freeing minds and not have a way of feeding them? Then you just end up with another Cypher situation. Surely Bugs learned about Cypher in all her Neo research, right? Actually, speaking of Cypher, since the first 3 Matrix movies are games in this current Matrix, would the first game include the bit where Cypher goes to see Agent Smith unbeknownst to everyone else? Or does the second Matrix game include the bit where Neo had the opportunity to end the war by going to the source but chose not to, then lies to Morpheus and everyone else? Anyway, it turns out the woman who makes noodles so good it keeps Neo from noticing Tiffany, and inadvertently doing a better job at keeping them apart than the handlers, is Sati, who was a little program girl in Matrix 3. But here's the thing, we know people inside the Matrix age according to the Matrix, which is why Neo is 20 years older and not 60 years older. We also know programs age according to the Matrix as well, which is why the Merovingian is also 20 years older. So, riddle me this, Batman, why is Sati looking 32 years older than she did in Matrix Revolutions? I don't know who needs to hear this, but drink more water. Or maybe Sati had to get a new shell like what happened with the Oracle, and if that's the case, then she chose a good shell. I ain't gonna lie. Anyway, now they're enacting Sati's elaborate plan. We've learned that the current Matrix needs both Neo and Trinity, and after Neo was unplugged, a failsafe was kicked in to revert back to the previous Matrix, but the analyst convinced the machines to stop the countdown, believing that Neo would come back. Okay, but it seems to me that no matter what happens next, the machines win. They either get Neo back and continue with the current Matrix, or they lose Trinity and revert back to the previous Matrix. Either way, the machines have people to draw power from. It's just the analyst would be out of a job. Well, I'm sure someone with a 30+ year history in healthcare would be back on their feet in no time. But speaking of the analyst, he can slow down Matrix time. So why leave any of this to chance? Slow down time and put a bullet in Tiffany's head before she finishes her game review. Speaking of slowing down time, didn't Smith say he needs Neo to die so he can have his life back? So why didn't he take the super clear opportunity he had to kill Neo instead of going straight for the analyst? You can deal with the analyst later. How many times is Neo going to be this easy to kill? And what's this unexpected alliance about? Smith still needs Neo dead, right? Can't lie though, this chase scene is pretty cool, especially at the end when Neo redirects the missile. So the movie ends with Neo and Trinity going to see the analyst to beat him up a little bit. And we also find out that the machines tries to revert back to the previous Matrix, but couldn't because they don't have Neo and Trinity's source code. And they haven't got rid of the analyst because he knows the system and he knows humans. Obviously doesn't know humans that well, otherwise this scene wouldn't exist. Anyway, that's all well and good, but really kind of feels a bit made up on the spot. I mean, the current Matrix needs both Neo and Trinity. Neither Neo or Trinity are plugged into it right now. So what exactly is keeping it up and running? Because if the current Matrix can run without Neo and Trinity like it clearly is, then it seems like the machines never actually needed Neo or Trinity for the current Matrix to begin with. They could have just left them dead. Or is the disarray of the analyst's office indicative of the Matrix falling apart? And if that's the case, then what happens to all the people still plugged in? Or are we gonna have yet another unaddressed mass genocide? In any case, after 2 hours and 15 minutes, we still don't know what the actual purpose of all this is. This movie did not need to happen. But that's what I think of The Matrix Resurrections. What do you think of The Matrix Resurrections? Let me know down below, and while you're there, be sure to like, subscribe, and drop a suggestion if you don't mind.